Hi, Valerie. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Good. We're going to wait just a few moments if anybody else comes in, okay?
Oh, okay, that'll be fine.
And I'll be right back.
All right.
I had my lunch in the microwave. Sorry.
No problem. How's your grandbaby?
She is doing wonderful. Um, we don't see her every day, which we should, but we don't. But it's amazing the amount of growth over the last couple weeks.
Yes, they grow fast.
Yeah, they
You
sure
gotta
do.
enjoy it while you can.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, do me a favor. It's been a while. Remind me about your background and your what you want to do with your degree.
I am in the real estate industry and I'm just trying to market to a new, just letting people who never thought that they can own homes be able to own a home, afford a home, letting them know that there is opportunities and availabilities for them to own a home instead of renting all the rest of their life, and
Okay.
explain the benefits of home ownership.
And so you're looking at your marketing degree to augment and help your ability to sell homes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this class is the second half of earned media. So the first half was new media marketing, where we were getting influencers to tell our story, or brand ambassadors to tell our story. This time we're going to we're going to add some layers to it. Earned media, in a traditional sense, is about having the legacy media, which would be, let's see, broadcast or print, so radio, television, newspapers, magazines, all those traditional avenues tell our story. So a journalist in those companies or industries telling our story for us, combined with the influencers that we got to learn about in new media marketing. And then there's a third component, which is the digital part. And what we want to happen is we want to have Google, Google, or DuckDuckGo, or whoever, Bing. We want them to tell our story by having our story found in search results. So what that means is that we have to have our story indexed by the search engines. So, and there's a couple ways to get that done, but there's only one. It all falls under one umbrella in terms of the indexing, and that is that you've got to submit your press release to one of the wire services. Now, there's some wire services that are free, and there's others that cost some that cost quite a bit. It doesn't matter which way you go, as long as you're matching your fiscal means along with your goals for the press release, to have it distributed by those entities. But the main thing that's happening when that occurs is that your press release is being indexed, meaning that it can show up in organic search results, and that's huge. So again, in the first half, we learned about influencers and brand ambassadors. We're not forgetting about them now. We're just adding to them the legacy media and then the digital elements of our story. Now, because it is a story, it's not a campaign. So in this class, unlike in new media where you might have to pay an influencer to do a blog post or something, again, not enough to be considered paid advertising, but still there might be some compensation. We're not talking anything that has to do with running an ad. So no PPC, no Google display ads. We're not talking about Facebook ads. We're not talking about Instagram advertising or Twitter or even LinkedIn.
Okay.
We are talking about having other people tell our story. So the story that we tell, the purpose for telling that story is obviously to build ultimate awareness with regard to the brand, but it's certainly not to see a direct result in people buying something, because unlike in advertising deals with our target market.
Right.
In public relations, our target market is just one little piece of the puzzle. We're actually dealing with the audience and the publics of the brand. What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Maryland, Baltimore,
Okay.
Maryland.
So that's right. I remember now. So you do not have public supermarkets. So when I say Publix, I don't have to say, no, not the supermarket.
No, we have public supermarket.
So with we are communicating to the public,
Mm-hmm.
and in particular the public that is the audience of the brand. Now, who's an audience of the brand? Well, it might be the person that has to supply something to the brand.
Okay.
Maybe they supply a part, maybe they supply a service, maybe they supply boxes, maybe they drive the truck that brings the boxes. Okay, those would all be an audience for the brand.
Okay.
An audience member might be somebody that you're not even aware of, but they're considering maybe going to work for the company. So again, they're not a target market. They're an audience of the brand because they've got an interest and they're keeping their eye on what the brand is doing and considering whether or not they might want to work for that company. So audience members are huge. I mean, they're all over the place. An audience member might be somebody, give you an example. In Orlando, everybody that lives in Orlando is an audience to Walt Disney World.
Right.
Because things that happen at Walt Disney World will have an impact on, I no longer work for the company, and I live 60 miles away. Well, no, that was my round trip. I'm about 30, 35 miles away.
Okay.
That's not close. It's not like down the street. But if Disney does something, it usually has an impact to me because I live in the market. So I'm an audience to what's going on with Disney.
Mm-hmm.
and so just being in the general proximity is huge, or you know, what can make you an audience member. Just being in the area where the company is. You know, I watched. Have you ever watched the movie Aaron Brockovich?
No.
Great movie. And I'm only a so-so Julia Roberts fan, but great movie. And it's about this chemical company outside of Bakersfield, California. And Bakersfield, you know, it's kind of like in the, it's like the next county over from LA County, and LA County is huge.
Okay.
And so Bakersfield is really, I don't know what it looks like anymore. It's been ages since I've been out in California, but it was, you know, even in the early 2000s, it was still like being out in the Hicks.
Okay. Out in the wilderness.
Yes. Country western bars, ranches, pickup trucks, dirt roads.
Oh my goodness.
And there was this chemical company that actually told the surrounding residents, that explained what their processes were and what they were doing, and told them that they were actually improving and enhancing the drain water that was going back into the soil. Well, this was a toxic spill worse than the Love Canal up in New York, which was back in the early 70s. And I mean, people were getting, I mean, whole families were being wiped out from cancers caused by the heavy metals and so forth. And so the audience, you know, there was an example of a proximity. The audience was everybody that was anywhere close to that company. And those audience members, they became a special group known as stakeholders. Mm-hmm. They became stakeholders because the company did something that had an impact on them directly.
Right.
So when the company has an impact on an audience member directly, then they become a stakeholder. Conversely, if I'm an audience, you know, if I've been one of those residents and I started picketing, and I might have been able to picket enough to have the plant shut down, then I would have been a stakeholder also, because I was having impact on the company. So it's symbiotic. It goes both ways.
Okay.
So that's who we deal with in terms of public relations. Now, the thing to realize, there are many companies out there that are public relations companies, and they really don't do any paid advertising. But yet they really look like they're a marketing company doing advertising. That's because in public relations, the public relations counselor's job is really to influence public opinion and build awareness for the brand or the cause. Mm-hmm. And so in doing that, the way that we do it is we do it through something called newsworthy events. We want to tell other people about newsworthy events as it relates to our company. So in turn, they tell people. It's an organic response, right?
Right.
And I was looking for my soda. There it is. What do you call it in Maryland? Soda or pop? I forget.
They call it both. Some people, older generation, call it pop. Younger generation call it soda.
I grew up in Philadelphia, and it was always soda, and then I moved to Cleveland, and it was pop.
Right. So it depends on who you're around, what generational gap you're with, because everybody has same concept but different meanings.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're to the point of talking about newsworthy events. Mm-hmm. Now, newsworthy events. What do you think a story has to, what makes a story newsworthy? Any thoughts?
Credibility,
I'm
the
sorry, say it
truth,
again.
their credibility, the truth of the story, and if it's something that grabs the attention of the audience.
I got so many books out lately, and
Let me get a piece of paper. Okay, I'm back.
so I also teach in the new media journalism program as well, and this is journalism practices and policies. And one of the things to realize is the relationship between public relations and the media is, and by the media I mean journalists, very, very close. It's almost incestual, incestual in terms of how close it is. I'll give you a great example. At Disney, I was at Disney for a little over a decade, and I'm having a real hard time trying to remember a public relations spokesperson for the company that was not a former news anchor on one of the Orlando TV stations.
Okay. Wow.
Okay? Now there were other people in the public relations department that didn't have that kind of exposure or notoriety. But again, that's how close. In 10 years, I can't think of one that wasn't a former news anchor. But so let me tell you what in journalism school, what we teach in terms of stories that have news value. So there are stories of power elites, stories concerning powerful individuals, organizations, or institutions. Celebrity, stories concerning people who are famous. Entertainment, stories concerning sex, show business, human interest, animals, and unfolding drama or offering opportunities for humorous treatment, entertaining photographs, or witty headlines. Surprise, stories with an element of surprise and or contrast. Bad news, stories with negative overtones that are about conflict or tragedy. Stories with positive overtones. Something good happens, serendipity, rescues, or a cure. The magnitude of the story. Stories perceived as sufficiently significant, either in the number of people involved or in the potential impact. Relevance. Stories about issues, groups, and nations perceived to be relevant to the audience. So there's a direct tie with the audience. Follow-ups. So just a follow-up to a previous story. We see that in press releases all the time. In other words, here's a press release announcing something happening. 2 weeks after the happening, what actually happened? What was the result? Another press release, which is another newsworthy story. And then media agenda, stories that set or fit the organization's agenda. So in this case, when I say organization, I'm not talking about the business. I'm talking about the media organization. Does this fit into their agenda? So that's what a journalist considers being news relevant. And we can extrapolate from that what we want to see or what our audiences want to see with regard to our brand or our business are stories that have proximity. They're impacting the immediate audience. That they're of importance. That they're impacting and creating a human story somehow, shape or form. That it may be a controversy, but it's going to impact that audience is what we're getting down to. One of the questions that you have to ask yourself all the time, and that you have to be prepared to have asked of you, is why is this story newsworthy? In other words, if I'm a reporter, why would I put it in my paper? Why would I write a story about it? Having said that, let me tell you that probably 65 to 70% of everything you see in the media, so everything you see in the news, whether print, broadcast, television, radio, doesn't matter. Those stories, 60 to 70% of those stories started as a press release.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once upon a time, back when I was younger, I remember when we only had 3 main TV stations. Growing up in Philadelphia, there was Channel 6, Channel 3, and Channel 10. The funny thing is, I think 2 of those stations have changed their affiliations. So Channel 3, I think, is now CBS. It used to be NBC. And Channel 10, which used to be CBS, is now NBC. The only one that didn't change was WPVI, which was Channel 6, which was the ABC. That was not, and the reason that has stayed the same is because Capital Cities Disney, which is the owner, they actually own that station. That's one of the big stations that they own in the U.S. They also own the New York station, for example, and so forth. Whereas the others were affiliates. The ownership of that station has decided to partner with CBS or NBC or whatever. So those, you know, when I was growing up, those were the 3 big ones. And then we had 3 UHF channels.
I remember those.
And so we had a total of 6, right? And the 3 main networks, and then these other channels, which I love because they showed all the really cool stuff. Like they used to show Japanese cartoons like Tobar the Eighth Man and Astro Boy and Speed Racer and then Superman. And then my favorite, I could also watch the Mickey Mouse Club, which I love love to watch the Mickey Mouse Club. That was, but in terms of news, if you wanted to hear news, it was one of the 3. And the other thing was that around 1 o'clock in the morning, they all went off the air. They'd come on at 6, and then they'd go off at 1. So they were basically only on the air for about 20 hours. Mm-hmm. There was a limit to how much information you could push. And so you had local news and national news, and the local news came on at 6 o'clock and would run to 7, and then the national news with Walter Cronkite or the Huntley and Brinkley report on NBC would come on at 7, and then at 8 o'clock the networks would again take over with prime time. Actually, I think I said that wrong. 5 to 6, and then 6 to 7, and then there was junk program from 7 to 8, and then 8 o'clock the prime time programming would come on. The point being that there was limited amount of information that the media needed. Well, then in the late 90s and early 2000s, cable became more prominent, and we started seeing an exponential increase in the number of stations and broadcast media. And not only that, we were now 24/7.
Right.
And so thousands and thousands of minutes of information needs to be created daily.
Don't look at your message, it's fake news.
The heck?
Don't look at your message, it's fake news.
Thank you. Okay. So hundreds and thousands of minutes of programming needed to be made. And now another interesting phenomenon. You and I, we started to get hooked. We think about, do you have an Android or do you have an iPhone?
Both.
You got both. Okay. Oh, wow. You're two-fisted.
Yeah.
How many times a day do you look at your phone?
Which one? Both of them. Because I have like my personal use is on an Android. No,
Right.
it's on an iPhone. And my business is on an Android because most real estate agents does everything on an Android system, because at one time when we were sending documents to each other, we couldn't do it on an Apple product. It would never line up correctly.
Gotcha.
But then when Steve Jobs passed away and he allowed Microsoft to be on Mac OS, then
Right.
that's when a lot of people start going to the Apple products. But I never just pushed everything over because DocuSign, I could send stuff out through DocuSign, through different things easier on an Android. Most people understand the concept of how to DocuSign through an Android.
Gotcha. So but beyond work and personal calls and stuff like that, do you use your phone for researching anything? Do you use your phone for looking at news and so forth?
Yes, and I do that mostly on my Android.
So I know I've got the Wall Street Journal, I've got Fast Company, I've got I got a bunch of news apps, and I got a couple of aggregators that bring in news feeds all the time. That's what that's basically what Twitter is. Twitter
Right.
is it's an aggregator of what everybody's thinking. But anyway, I kind of look, and it's like one of two things I guess I'm expecting based on the frequency that I look at the phone. I'm expecting that the world's going to blow up. And then when I look at my phone and it hasn't blown up, I'm both satisfied but kind of disappointed that nothing happened.
Right. Because where will we be without our phones right now?
Right. And so what's happened in this vicious 24/7 cycle, audiences have become in need of something happening.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is something doesn't happen that often.
Right.
But what businesses and public relation people have figured out is that we don't need something to happen in order to have something happen. Am I confusing you yet?
Nope.
We can create newsworthy stories that are actually pseudo events, that they're not real events. And we actually see this right now. It couldn't be a better time because like every day a new poll comes out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Polling started back in the early 1900s with George Gallup. And George Gallup did a daily poll on the sentiment of the American society, American people. And he did it, it was a daily tracking poll of what people were thinking. But he only reported on it every so often, very, very rarely, in other words. So we went from a point in time where research polls were used to report on and tell us about things and tell us about what people were thinking, basically, to today where polls are used to influence that thinking. I've got an MBA, and I'll tell you what the thing that you should know about MBAs is that we get more math in the form of quantitative analysis and research and other things than you could ever imagine. Why am I telling you that? Because I can design a poll to say whatever I want the outcome to be.
Right. Right.
And so once people learned like that little trick, polls became not a real event, but a pseudo event. But there are a lot of pseudo events that don't have to rely on polls, and they're just contrived events. And I'll give you an example in a moment. I lost my prop. I think I ate it. I'm pretty sure I did. Oh, I hate that. But the good news is it's Halloween time, and I think I can get another one.
Right.
We back in the this goes all the way back into the 80s. I was the vice president, general manager of a chain of retail jewelry stores in the 80s. I had almost a little over 60 stores. Not huge stores, but we were the largest privately owned retail jeweler in America at the time. And we so I had been following local events in Lexington, which is where our corporate office was, and I saw a story, and it was in the news, and the story was that Telly Savalas. Do you know who Telly Savalas is?
Yes, I do.
Telly Savalas was going to give the commencement address at the University of Kentucky. And I'm like, I got to be able to do something with that. That's kind of cool. I need to find a way to do something with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it just so happened that my oldest son had been born the beginning of April. So my son being born in this story, my son came first. Then I saw the story. But what happened when my son was born, my boss, the owner of the company, he gave Jonathan a gift. And the gift that he gave him was a solid gold feeding spoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking about that. I mean, I was highly impressed. It was odd. It was unusual. It was something that you know, who gives somebody a gift of a spoon? All right, who gives somebody a gift of a gold spoon, solid gold, 14 karat? And so I was very, very impressed. It wasn't something I ever expected for him. And little did he know I'd have 5 kids.
Oh.
And he started a tradition. But I'm thinking about that, and then I'm thinking about Telly Savalas, and I said, what was Telly Savalas's trademark? Do you know?
No.
Well, he was bald,
Mm-hmm.
and evidently he had quit smoking. Is his backstory, but his signature look was always sucking on a Tootsie Roll Pop.
Yes. Yes.
And I said, let's make Telly Savalas a solid gold Tootsie Pop.
Okay.
And I said, and we'll approach the university and see if as part of their, thanking him, they probably paid him a fee, but if they want to present him a gift, we'll offer to make the solid gold Tootsie Pop that they can then present him for making the speech at commencement. So I approached the folks at University of Kentucky, and they thought it was a great idea. They'd be stupid not to, right? It didn't cost them anything. It cost me a fortune,
Right.
but it didn't cost them anything. And what I did was we had the Tootsie Pop made. Actually, I think I used the ones that aren't Tootsie Roll, so not the name brand, but I think they're called Dum Dums for some reason.
Yeah.
And I did that because I was able to custom order them through a promotion company, and I went ahead and got like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. I don't remember. It was some ridiculous number. And I had them custom printed on the
Rapper.
not on the wrapper, but on the stick. And the stick said if you brought the stick into any C&H Rao Jewelers, you could get, I think I gave a discount, 10, 15% off of any purchase. And what we did is after he was presented with the Tootsie Pop, and it was announced, when they presented them, that C&H Rao Jewelers, hometown Lexington, Kentucky jewelry store chain, had made it and designed it and so forth. And we even had it was wrapped like it would be. So the wrapper was actually all gold too. It was really quite a unique piece of art. And I got to tell you another one of my, I get all these ideas and then I got to figure out what to do with them. And one of my favorite, you ever watch WKRP in Cincinnati?
Yes.
One of my favorite episodes of that TV show was a Thanksgiving episode where Nessman, the news guy, he was doing a turkey drop before Christmas out of a helicopter. And unfortunately for all the people on the ground, the turkeys were frozen. So what he was really doing was like bombing people.
Yes.
With turkeys. I always thought that was just absolutely hilarious. And I said to our team, I said, it'd be great if we could fly over it was in the stadium. I said, if we could fly over and do a lollipop drop on the field.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be away from where everyone was in the stands, but afterwards they would be able to come down and go out and grab a Tootsie Pop. And so we had the Tootsie Roll we were giving to Telly Savalas, and then, like I said, I think it was about 1,500, 2,000 Tootsie Pops that we then dropped from the helicopter.
Mm.
Not a real event. It's something that we contrived, right? It was something that we put together, that I put together, and I put it together because in the morning, every morning, I religiously read I had a number of different sources that I would always look at. And what I was doing by looking at those sources was doing business marketing intelligence and getting ideas.
Okay.
And then incorporating that into my plans for the day, week, month, whatever it might happen to be. So on a regular and consistent basis, I monitored media sources to see what was happening. We wrote a press release, and we got great coverage. And see, the other neat thing, most of my stores were in Kentucky itself. And the unique thing about the University of Kentucky, it truly was a state school. In other words, in all the small towns throughout Kentucky, kids dream of doing two things: playing basketball, and I don't care if you're up in some tiny coal mining town, or if you're in a suburb of Louisville. you grow up thinking one thing:
You're gonna play ball.
going to play ball, and not football. The University of Kentucky football team has sucked for decades.
Right. You're gonna play
But
basketball.
you're going to play basketball, and you're either going to be a Wildcat or you're going to be a Cardinal. You're either going to go to the University of Louisville or you're going to go to University of Kentucky in Lexington. And University of Kentucky had a much, much larger population.
Okay.
So at graduation, you've got all these kids graduating from all over the state of Kentucky. And, you know, they got their Tootsie Pop. Their parents got a Tootsie Pop off the ground. And they go home, and what do they have in their small hometown of 23? Well, I tried not to go less than 3,500 in population where I would put a store. So, but let's say it's a town of 4,000 people. What's there? One of my jewelry stores.
Right. That you can take a lollipop and get a discount.
Yes. So we ran the press release in the Lexington paper, but we also ran it in every significant paper in the state of, or we submitted it to every single paper in the state of Kentucky. And I think we got something close to like an 85% coverage of the story, where reporters were talking about the story. Then guess what we did? We did the post-action press release.
Mm-hmm.
We wrote about the fact that we did what we did, and then we wrote about the fact that Telly Savalas was just so thrilled. I actually got some quotes, and again we ran that almost not quite as much coverage, but well over 50% of the papers in the state of Kentucky covered the story again. So that's a pseudo event. And that's how you create a pseudo event. So in this week's assignment, part 2 of the assignment is you're developing a monitoring system.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to get it up and run. You don't want to wait till last minute, because you want to get it up and running and be doing this for a day or 2 or 3. Because what I'm asking you to report on is not only how you set it up and you know, what are your folders for how you're putting information and collecting information and so forth. And there's some very specific instructions for that. But what I'm really driving towards is I want you to take all that monitoring, that business intelligence that you're getting in, and I want you to be looking for 3 things. I want you to be looking, number 1, is there any threat? Is there anything on the horizon that's threatening the organization that could possibly create a public relations crisis? Okay? And a public relations crisis is something that can hurt the credibility, impact the trustworthiness, and destroy the brand. Those are things that you want to look for. The next thing you want to look for are just what other companies are doing. And why do you want to do that? Because it's by looking at what other people are doing. And it doesn't have to be a direct competitor. It can be somebody in the general industry, right? And what you're looking for, what are they doing that I can kind of take and modify and make my own and create my own pseudo event from? You know, as marketers, you know, in academia, you have to give credit when you write and you put a quote or you paraphrase something and put it in a paper. In business, yes, we've got copyright and we've got intellectual property and so forth. But there's so many items that fall outside of that realm that we can look at, and it gives us ideas. Back when I was on the manufacturing side of the jewelry industry, and I worked in New York, every Friday I would take my lunch hour and I would actually walk over to Fifth Avenue, and I would visit 3 jewelry stores, Harry Winston's. I would visit Fortunov's, and I can't believe I can't remember the third one. That's pathetic. Anyway, three of the big, I said Harry Winston's and Fortunov's and Tiffany's.
Now, how can you forget Tiffany's?
How could I forget Tiffany's, right? And so what I do is I would go in and I would just walk around and look at what their products were, what new products. Maybe it'd been there a while and I just didn't see it on my last visit, a number of things. But I'd always go in and look, and then I'd come back, and not every week, but every so often, I'd see something that would spark an idea. And I'd go back to our in-house designer, and I would sit down and I would kind of pencil out what I saw, and he would do some things, and we would collaborate and come up with a new piece of jewelry. And you know, where'd the idea come from? It came from those three houses. And why those three houses? Because they are actually manufacturing companies and houses. They do buy some stuff from some manufacturers, but they do a lot of design in their own house and then farm it out to special factories. So a lot of times when you see a product in Tiffany's, it truly is a Tiffany creation, or a Harry Winston creation. At any rate, that's idea spotting, and that's the second thing. So idea spotting for a pseudo event is something that you can do as you're looking through your results of your monitoring system. And then the third thing is we just want to be communicating to our audiences on a regular basis.
Right.
And we will do that not necessarily through a press release, but we'll do that through our own media channels. It might be a blog, it might be a Facebook post, or a Instagram picture, or something that we put on Twitter. But we want to be communicating on a regular basis because we want to keep our brand top of mind with the audiences that we've identified. And here's the thing. Years ago, I actually used to do campaign management for judicial candidates, and we did a lot of direct mail. And what our research had shown was that judges have because of judicial rules, they're allowed to say very little. So how do most judges get elected? For one reason or another, their name stands out above their competition. And it can be a combination of branding. It can be a combination of a number of things. But we can say some things, and the way that we would get name recognition is through direct mail. Now, you don't see that quite so much anymore, but back in the day, this time of year, your mailbox would just be brimming with postcards and flyers and everything from every political candidate under the sun. The reason for that is to drive name recognition. The research says that a voter needs at least 8 pieces of mail to begin to get recognition. It's that eighth piece of mail where they're like, yeah, I've gotten something from this person before. The 8th through the 24th piece of mail is where you begin to drive your relationship and the voter's knowledge of the person if they're looking at it. Now, why 24? Because they don't look at everything. So, but 24 was if you could get 24 pieces of mail out, and if your opponent got 24 pieces of mail out, it was probably a draw from a marketing standpoint. Then it's a matter of the issues relating to the voter demographic. which one relates best. If you get 24 pieces out and your opponent only gets 8, there's a very, very high percentage that you're going to win the election. So that's the idea behind name recognition and repeating the message. So what we want to do as public relations people is we want to keep the name and the brand in front of our audience on a regular basis. And the way that we do that is if we have to create everything, if I got to create 8 posts a week from scratch, I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to need a staff of about 20 people.
Right.
But if I see something that somebody else has written that I think will relate to our brand's audience, and then I share it, and I put a little, I put my little 2 cents on top of the post, that is the same credit as if I created the post to begin with.
Okay.
And so the third thing that you're looking for are pieces of information that you can then share with your audience so that you're maintaining ongoing brand awareness with that audience. So again, the 3 items that you look for from the monitoring, 1 is any sort of crisis that you can prevent. 2 are ideas for newsworthy events, for pseudo events in particular. And 3, for items that you can share in order to maintain brand awareness. So in the assignment, I say, I forget whether it's 2 or 3, I think it's 2. Give me 2 items that you've learned from running the monitoring system. Never fail, and I'll know this because people are not going to watch this Zoom session. So they're not going to know what I'm about to tell you. But it never fails that what somebody will respond with is, well, our brand's got no Facebook presence. We got to be on Facebook. If you had to find that out by monitoring, there's something wrong. That's not something that you learn from the monitoring system. Again, something that you learned is either going to be something that is going to prevent a crisis, something that will help you create a newsworthy event, or something that you can share.
Right.
Now, the first part of the assignment is strictly with regard to understanding the strategic environment that your company sits in. You've done this in bits and pieces through all your other coursework, I'm sure, but I want to make sure that you're really grounded. And this is important because the public relations person or the public relations function is a cross function, meaning that sometimes it resides in marketing and sometimes it resides in executive communication. But there's always the relationship. If it resides in marketing, you're spending up to 50% of your time with executive communication issues. If you're in executive communication, then you're spending about 50% of your time in marketing. And it's interesting. You can see this too with social media. Social media marketing, a lot of times it'll be actually as part of executive communications rather than in marketing. Usually wherever public relations is, that's where social media ends up too, just FYI. But what you want to do is explain what is the strategic context. There's 4 main elements of strategic context. The mission statement, the vision statement, the values, and the culture. Those 4 things really define the strategy of the company. And mission, let me define that a little bit further. The mission of a company should answer, not all of them do because not all of them are bright, should answer the 3 questions. Why does the company exist today? For whom does it exist today? And to what extent? Now, two companies that you can go take a look at just to see how well this can be done. Nike's mission statement is like 11 words and it answers all three questions. And Starbucks mission statement answers all the questions. So those are two you can look at just to see how a company can take those three questions and have them answered in the mission statement. Culture and culture is something that you're going to need to probably do some research on. And again, one of the best places is the website, the company's website. In today's age of transparency, you can learn a lot about a company's strategy just by digging into their website and looking at all the information they have. And sometimes it's not, they don't say, hey, here's our strategy. You got to go different places to look. For example, sometimes it may be if they have a link for hiring people, apply here. They'll have a detailed section in there that talks about the company's strategy, mission, what their values and culture are. So again, use the company's website as much as you can. Then use research. Use the school library. You can find out a lot of information on a lot of companies by doing various either Nexus Lexis research or EBSCO research. And both of those are available through the library. The other thing I want to make sure that you know in the first part is that you can define a stakeholder and that you also understand how your company makes money.
Okay.
Okay. What's the business model for the company? But guess what? That's just about the whole hour. I didn't talk about the discussion post. It's pretty self-explanatory, but I'd also like you to take a look at and make sure that you understand two concepts that have a lot of impact in companies today, and it's how a lot of companies get into trouble. I'm not saying I agree. I'm not saying I disagree, but postmodernism and critical theory, both of which are related. They are two ways of viewing the world, and when companies don't take that into consideration, oftentimes they get blindsided and they find that something that they thought was X turns out to be related to those two worldviews, and then it just kind of spirals out of control. You can see that, a good example of that, if you recall the United Airlines, when they tried to take that guy off the plane because they were overbooked, probably 2 or 3 years ago now. It's getting old. I'll have to come up with some new ones. Starbucks periodically is in the news for doing something that spirals out of control and gets them into trouble, and it's because they've hit an issue that's related to postmodernism or critical theory. Trying to think what else. That's pretty much it. So I just want to make sure that you've done some research on those worldviews. I don't really have any question in the discussion related to that, but when we get to week 4 and you're doing your crisis theory, that's where it's going to be important when you talk about mitigation and things like that to have that background. So that's why I kind of throw that in on the week 1 discussion research. Okay?
Okay.
Any questions for me?
Nope.
Well, it's been fun. I think you're going to enjoy this class because it really is very, very, it's the big umbrella, and we tackle a number of topics.
Okay. Well, I'm here.
Awesome. Valerie, if you need me, 407-267-8600. Have a great week and a great weekend.
You also.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.